Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. And welcome back to Solo RPG Friday. Okay, in today's video, I am going to be discussing 3 system/tools that I recommend for people who are just kind of getting into solo role-playing. I'm also going to discuss a bonus recommendation for somebody who is brand new to gaming, who maybe eventually wants to get into the solo role-playing realm. In my introduction video to solo role-playing, I gave a whole bunch of examples of different tools and systems, different kinds of games, different things that you could use for journaling style games where you were keeping a journal while you were writing, while you were playing. Games that were more scripted, that were easier to get into, games that needed less effort from the player, things that were more complex, things that offered more structured play, all in one systems that contained everything you needed, things that provided a more sandbox, open world style play, tools that you could use to overlay on top of other systems, and things that were simple. And so these are kind of like the buckets that I have created where I continue to go back to these keywords while I am discussing and while I am learning about solo role-playing. But in that video, I didn't give my personal recommendations for what I think are kind of like, the best ways to start, the best ways to play. So in this video, I'm going to give you 3 concrete examples plus a bonus example. Let's start with the bonus example. And the bonus example is for somebody who has very, very limited experience in tabletop role-playing games, or really in tabletop gaming in general. Maybe they have some experience back when they were younger playing D&D. Maybe they have some computer or video game experience, but they want to get into tabletop gaming and they eventually want to arrive at tabletop role-playing. For that person, I recommend starting off with something pretty simple and scripted, but also something that can provide you with a little bit of that sandbox feel to get you into the general role-playing vicinity. And that is Fabled Lands. This game book series is excellent. Even though it is a series, it's not a series like the Lone Wolf books, or it's not an anthology series like Fighting Fantasy. You don't need to read these in any order. Each book of Fabled Lands focuses on a certain part of the world, and you can jump from one book to another depending on where you are on the map. So you might be here in this book and you might take a boat over here at one point. And then when you reach here, it'll say, hey, turn to book 3 and continue your adventure in book 3. You can start with any book. So you don't, if where you buy your books, book 1 isn't available, you can go ahead and start with book 2, or you can start with book 3. It doesn't really matter. These offer up a grand epic experience. There are a ton of quests, a ton of different side quests. The cool thing about Fabled Lands is that it utilizes a keyword system. So the book kind of remembers things about what you have done. You can visit towns. In towns, you can buy homes, or you can buy places to where you can store your items, to where you can return to later to retrieve those things. So there are some light RPG elements. There are some things to keep track of. There is some light bookkeeping that will kind of train you and prepare you for something a little deeper. So this is the bonus recommendation for the brand new person into the realm of tabletop games, and that is Fabled Lands. So now let's go into the first of my recommendations for somebody wanting to play solo role-playing. And that would be Mork Borg as the system, along with the Solitary Defilement solo tool and a supplement called Feratory. You can get all 3 of these in PDF from DriveThruRPG for about $30, so it's not a big investment. And the PDFs are perfect for play. I actually prefer to use them when I am playing because I can open them up in a binder and keep them open. So why do I recommend Mork Borg? The core rules are super simple, super easy to learn and play. There is a page here that summarizes them. The game has a ton of really cool charts, and there are a lot of supplements available for Mork Borg that are cheap, free, and readily available both online in print and in PDF. You can learn Mork Borg and you can learn the whole game in a matter of minutes. It's very easy. It's very approachable as far as the rules go. It looks kind of scary, but that is kind of the point because of the theme and because of the setting. So with Mork Borg, I do recommend to play solo. You really do need the solitary defilement, or I highly recommend the solitary defilement system by 1d10 plus 5. This is a fantastic system that contains everything you need to play Mork Borg as a solo game or as a GM-less co-op game. And I do like the system. It lends itself well to creating stories with how the tests are done. It has a lot of general moves, different things that you can do in the game. It kind of lays over almost a board game like structure, so it's very easy to get into. It has a ton of really cool charts and stuff to roll on. It has a really good traveling chart for when you are doing your overland traveling. It has great rules for dungeon crawling, and it really does just have everything you need to play Mork Borg as a solo or co-op game. It also comes with Alone in the Crowd, which is everything that you would need to have urban adventures. Again, with all kinds of charts and everything. If you do go down this route, I highly, highly recommend, though, that you also pick up Feratory, which is included in my $30 estimation, because this will just add, even though Feratory isn't necessarily made for the solo player, you do get a lot of options in here, especially in overland crawling and your hex crawls and in hunting, and because a lot of Mork Borg is about survival. So this supplement here will add a lot to your survival play. Highly, highly recommended. But this system is fantastic. The books are small. They're easy to understand. They're easy to store. Now, one negative, some people might be turned off by the dark kind of a death metal vibe or the setting or the world. And I totally understand that. And while I think that the game thrives when you fully embrace that tone, you don't need to in order to enjoy it. You could just play Mork Borg as kind of a typical fantasy or as kind of like a weird dark fantasy. You don't need to super buy into the death metal vibe, but it will help. And it will add to your enjoyment, I think. But I know that there are some players out there who don't like this vibe, and that could turn certain people off. And I completely understand that. And so for the second recommendation, if you want something that is more of a traditional fantasy setting, then I recommend something that is a more traditional fantasy, but a little different in how it handles solo role-playing. And that would be D100 Dungeon. And I recommend the core rulebook along with the D100 Dungeon World Builder. These two books can be purchased on DriveThruRPG, again in PDF form, for about $30. I've tried to keep my three main recommendations, around $30 each, so not a big barrier of entry financially. So D100 Dungeon, the core book gives you everything you need for a kind of simplistic roll and write dungeon crawl game. And the world builder gives you everything you need to take your adventures outside of the dungeon into a big land that you create while you are exploring from one hex to another. The combination of these two books creates a fantastic game full of questing and adventure. So D100 Dungeon is a little light on the role playing. It is more focused on a traditional kind of dungeon crawl experience. that you might have from old school D&D. And so if you remember old school D&D fondly and you want to kind of recreate those adventures where you just rolled up a hero and over again you went into dungeons, getting treasure, fighting monsters, getting more loot in order to make your character more and more powerful so they could continue to have more and more interesting adventures, then this really is the game for you. This is a super fun system where you're going to be rolling a D100, 2D10s, rolling a D100, consulting charts, drawing dungeons, and fighting monsters and getting loot and hoping to continue to upgrade your character and get them stronger. The world builder really does open up the world, the game of D100 Dungeon, and makes it far more interesting. I love this book. I love this expansion. This is one of my favorite expansions for any game. I love the hex crawl system here. It has a whole quest system, a random quest generation. It has a whole bunch of different random events that you will encounter while you are exploring the world, while you are creating your world. And it really does make me feel like I am creating and living in this persistent world, exploring the land, finding dungeons, and continuing to live in this world. You can invest your money in castles and in settlements and all kinds of stuff. This is really, really fun. It's a little lighter on the narrative, so it's more focused on that kind of that dungeon crawl style gameplay. The layout could definitely be better in these books. I really wish that Martin Knight, the creator, would invest in having somebody having a layout artist go through and just kind of redesign his books. They look cheap, but they're not. The wealth of knowledge in these books and the game is awesome, but just simply having this in columns would not only make the game look nicer, look classier, a little more expensive, but it would also be easier to read. That's one complaint I have about a lot of these DIY books. Just they don't look very nice, and it would cost no money to put this in columns. I mean, even Microsoft Word can do that. So I would encourage Martin Knight to just invest a little bit of time and money into having a better layout for his books. I think it would go a long way in making them look and feel more professional. But you also need to be okay with a little bit of drawing in these games. You don't have to have great artistic skill, but as you are exploring the hexes, you will have to draw and color a little bit. And as you are exploring the dungeons, you will also have to do the same. So just know that going in, you're going to have to get a little bit crafty with your role playing in D100 Dungeon. Okay, and finally, for our third recommendation today, an all-in-one system. This one book has absolutely everything you need. This is the book that I recommend to everybody. I'm like a broken record. Over and over again, I see people ask, what do I need? What's one system that has everything I need for dungeon crawling, for wilderness adventures, for urban adventures, something that is light and simple but has some good mechanisms? And the answer I always give is Scarlet Heroes from Kevin Crawford. This truly is an all-in-one solution containing everything you need. The rules are dead simple. As a matter of fact, there is a single page quick reference that has just about all of the major core rules on one page. Scarlet Heroes is based on old school D&D basically, but they got rid of THAC0 and they substituted it with the the infinitely superior Target 20 system, which also makes it dead simple to convert the mountains of old school material to Scarlet Heroes. It is so easy to convert OSR and your OSE stuff to Scarlet Heroes. It takes hardly any time at all. And so there is already a wealth of material out there that you can use to play Scarlet Heroes with. You can use any of the old modules or any of the old OSR supplements, and you could be up and running in minutes. It is designed from the ground up for pure solo hero play. with or without a game master. This is the best system that I know of for truly emulating the kind of superhuman adventures found in all of the sword and sorcery fiction that we love. If you want to play a badass hero like Conan or Elric or Kane, Fafhrd and Grey Mouser, Dilvish the Damned, or Bloodsong, this is the system for you. In Scarlet Heroes, you aren't some weak nobody barely able to survive like in Dungeon Crawl Classics. None of that. This is a game of heroic adventure, a game of true sword and sorcery adventure. And it also contains absolutely everything you need. In the back of the book here is the solo rules. So you have a full chapter on solo gaming. You have all of your basic oracles that you would need, some different charts that you can roll on, how to create NPCs and relationships really quickly. And then you get into all of your rules and charts that you would need to have urban adventures. Then you would get into everything you need to have your wilderness adventures. And then finally, everything you need to have your dungeon adventures, all in one book. It also contains this chapter on adventure tags, and I love this adventure tag system. This is something that Kevin Crawford uses in a lot of his books. And these are like groups of things that you can use to quickly create interesting adventures and settings. So if you were to have a dungeon setting here, and let's say you just wanted to roll up something real quick, random, okay, a 4. So we're looking at a disorientating layout. And then you could find that, and then this would tell you a little bit about that. So the dungeon or site has something unique about it that makes it very hard to navigate. It may have subtle short-range teleportation, silently rotating rooms, mind-fogging mists, or an environment so hostile that exploration is extremely difficult. Okay, so in this kind of location, the kind of enemies you might find is maybe a hidden master of the lair, living mist thing, forever trapped ghost, furious original builder of the place. Friends you might find there, trapped explorer, frustrated heir to the place, a fascinated sorcerer, or maybe a bounty hunter after someone inside. Some things you might find there, maybe a key to escape, perhaps a secret control unit, artifact to detect confusing magic, a treasure at the area's heart. Some complications. The area is alive and its changes are organic. Escape requires finding some sort of key. The inhabitants use the effect to defend themselves from invaders, or the environment has had dire influence on its denizens. And perhaps some example places you would find there is a maze of twisty passages, all alike, a hall of identical rooms, mist-shrouded pit-laced corridor, or rooms of one-way doors. So helpful. These adventure tags, and there are a ton of them. There are 60 different adventure tags, 20 for each an urban, wilderness, and dungeon environments. Highly, highly recommend Scarlet Heroes. Now, some people might be turned off by the kind of Pan-Asian theme. And that is especially true in the bestiary, which is a little kind of, I guess you could say it is exotic. It doesn't have your typical kind of orcs and goblins and skeletons and things. You will have enemies that are a little different. So you might have a hard time finding minis or finding standees to use in your games. And if you find the setting to be a little odd, there is a very, very easy and cheap solution to that. And that is to just buy the white box Fantastic Medieval Adventure game as your setting, as your traditional fantasy setting, using Scarlet Heroes with this book. Scarlet Heroes is about $20 for the hardback, and white box here is only $5 on Amazon. So you're looking at both of these books for about $30. And white box is completely 100% compatible with Scarlet Heroes. And it has a more traditional bestiary and a more traditional fantasy setting. And so you can use all of the rules from here and just use this bestiary. You could also, for free, I think, or for a few dollars, you could also get the basic fantasy field guide, which is a more traditional bestiary book that you could also use with Scarlet Heroes. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind here is that Scarlet Heroes uses a target 20 system, which replaces THAC0. So thank God there's no THAC0 complications to worry about. You don't have to look up your to hit chance on charts or anything. It simplifies it by using a target 20 system, and it still uses a descending armor class. The armor class in White Box, you will find that it actually has an ascending and descending armor class. And as you can see, to determine if you're only presented with the ascending armor class, to find the descending armor class, both of those have to add up to 19. And so basically 15 ascending is 4 descending. So the Basic Fantasy Field Guide, all of its armor classes are ascending. So you just want to make sure, so if you were fighting a giant mosquito with an armor class of 11 in Scarlet Heroes, their armor class would be 9. And it's that simple. There, you've converted. Another thing that Scarlet Heroes does, though, is because it is designed for one hero, it also handles hit dice a little differently, and it's super easily explained in here, and that is very easy to convert from White Box and Basic Fantasy to Scarlet Heroes. So yeah, those are the 3 core system and things that I recommend for people getting into solo role-playing. Scarlet Heroes, fantastic, my favorite. I love Scarlet Heroes so much, an all-in-one system for everything you need for old school style role-playing. If you want something that is a little more focused on dungeon crawling and hex crawling, I recommend D100 Dungeon, the core book and the World Builder book. And also, if you want something that's a little weirder, a little more esoteric, a little out there, a little more metal, but still something super, super simple that has a ton of fun and a ton of stuff available, then I recommend Mork Borg with the Solitary Defilement core system, or the Solitary Defilement solo system, and the Feratory supplement. And if you are brand new to gaming, just getting into tabletop gaming, and you want to dip your toes into the solo role-playing pond, then I recommend a game book series, and especially Fabled Lands, because of how it emulates that kind of open world, kind of like Skyrim or Elder Scrolls style, kind of like just questing in this huge land. Fabled Lands is a great way to get started. So, all right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Solo RPG Friday, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.